And good morning, good morning, good morning. I hope everybody's doing well today. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my internet right over here. Just trying to get that booted up. Okay, it's good to see everybody. You'll notice that I'm coming from a different place today. I am in my office over here on South Campus at in Building B of South Campus. I'm having internet troubles at the house. Great. So I will probably be doing the rest of this summer's broadcast from the office so we don't have any problems. Good to see everybody. Who do I have in the audience today? Looks like I have Dimitro here. Who else do I have here? Who else do I have? Matthew Moreta. Good to see you as always. Thanks for coming. Johanna. Hi, Johanna. How are you doing? It's good to see you. I noticed we all took the first exam today, yesterday, and thank you very much for doing that. Some of you scored well, some of you didn't score quite as well. Don't worry, as long as you are doing the right things in this class, coming to class, working hard, doing the webinars, things will work out for you. I do promise. If anybody wants to talk about that, feel free to schedule a Teams meeting and we can get together and talk about that at any time. Good to see you, Caleb. So we have Caleb, Johanna, Matt, and Dimitro. Man, you are my hardcore fans. I can't begin to even tell you how excited I am to have everybody. I really do. You are some great students. Let's go ahead and without further ado, let's talk a little bit about chapter 9. This week we're going to cover chapters 9 and 10, friendship and love, and then close relationships. So we're going to be talking about the relationships that are a part of the life process. Remember, we've been talking about stress, about protecting yourself against stress, about methods for coping with stress. And it seems like every time we'd always mention friends, a support group, romantic relationships. And we talk about these relationships as being stress coping tools. Not tools, I don't want to call people tools, but you know what I mean. Ways that will help us cope with the stress of life. So we're going to spend this chapter and actually spend a little time talking about friendship and love. And so it's kind of cool to me. If you look at this particular chapter, a lot of this stuff is going to come from my field of psychology, social psychology. So we're going to be talking about sort of the social and contextual factors that affect people's relationships. So some of this stuff is going to be familiar to me. All right, if no questions, let's go ahead and get started. Okay. All right, so your book starts with a definition. Close relationships are those that are most important, interdependent, and long-lasting. They come in many forms, including family friendships, just friendships that are not related to families, work relationships. So you got your family, your friends, your work, your romantic relationships, and marriage is sort of got its own special category of close relationships. All right. So these are not the people that we meet day in and day out that move in and out of our life. These are the people that are going to help build sort of that support structure that we have. So where would you say, do you folks, just a quick question. I was wondering, we got 4 people in the audience. Do you have more work friends or out of work friends? So see how it says friendships and work friendships? I'd be curious. Do you think most of your friends come from work or most of your friends come outside of work? I'd be curious. You know, it seems for most adults, married guy, I've been married for 27 years and with the kids for the last 20. My wife, what I've found is that we don't really have as much time for friends as we did is when we were single and without children. It seems like you sort of turn inwards when you get married, and your friendships sort of they take a back burner, and you do have a few work relationships, but only because those are convenient. But it seems like, and I don't know if it's different for you, but it seemed like in my marriage, it's a real turning inward. More work friends. So Matt Morita says more work friends. If anybody else wants to type in, I'd love to see your chats as well. Close relationships. Now, the people that are really close to us are going to arouse intense feelings, you know what I mean, that are positive and well as negative. So I've never felt as loved as I did when I was sick and had my friends and family come around me and show concern and caring for me. And that was one of the most important factors in my surviving the sickness treatment a couple of years ago. So close relationships arouse these intense feelings. On the other hand, nobody has made me more angry than my children or my wife. And so we have these negative relationships. So, it's weird. I hear people sometimes talking about love. And it's usually people my age who are divorced or separated, and they actually act as if they'd rather, I can tell, they flip-flop back and forth between wanting somebody so bad and absolutely not wanting the negativity associated with the relationship. And so they call this the paradox of close relationships. I call it my divorced friends in their 50s, right? So let's talk about things that underlie initial attraction. A lot of really old school social psychology was used to sort of talk about the factors that underlie initial. And when we talk attraction, I mean attraction as friends, not necessarily romantic attraction or but romantic and filial attraction, just those forces that pull us together. When you walk out of your house today, there are some reasons why certain people become your friends and lovers and certain people do not. Now, some of the oldest research actually was conducted in the 50s and 60s on people living in student housing, married student housing in old apartments, and what they found, and actually was a study on fraternity brothers living in a fraternity house, and typically what they find is that people who live close to the exits where everybody has to walk out of the building tend to have the most friends. And if you look at people living in an apartment complex and ask them who their friends are, what you're going to find is their friends tend to develop from people that they have proximity to. Somebody's door that they pass every day. Somebody next door rather than 4 doors down. Somebody on this floor rather than on the next floor. So proximity is a big predictor of who we become attracted to. Now, I have a quick question. How do you think that works in the world of the virtual world? This research on proximity was done in the 1960s before people had computers, much less the internet. How do you think people get close to one another on the internet these days? Now, another line of research found that asked the question, what is it about seeing people every day that makes us become more friendly towards them? And what you're going to find is that familiarity is this idea of the mere exposure effect. I could actually take a picture of you, all right? Now, when you look in a mirror, you don't actually see you as you are. You see a mirrored image of you. You see the opposite side of you. When I take a picture, I can take a picture that is a mirrored image or a direct image, all right? Now, if I showed you the two pictures of yourself, your mirror image picture and your direct picture, the mirror image is the picture you look at in the mirror every day, and the direct picture is the picture that your friends see of you every day. And it turns out that if you ask people to pick between two selfies, people tend to pick the selfie of themselves that they see in the mirror every day. Does that make sense? And on the opposite, if I was to show your friends two pictures of you, one with the mirror image of your picture and one with the direct image of your picture, your friends would actually think, even though they looked exactly the same clothes and everything, your friend would prefer the direct image of you. And so we believe that just being exposed to somebody, so if you have a male or a female that you are romantically attracted to, the mere exposure effect would say the more that you're around them, the more likely they are to start liking you. I will put one caveat on this, and this is not in your book, so it's not going to be on your exam, but I heard this concept called environmental spoiling. What they say is that more exposure generally makes you more positive towards an object unless that initial feeling towards the object is negative. Then more exposure makes your feeling towards them become even more negative. But this explains why Pepsi, why Coca-Cola, why Budweiser, why all these brands want to be at every sport. What they know is the more you see Pepsi or Budweiser or McDonald's, the more times you see that name, since you have a favorable opinion, the more times you see it, the more positive your feeling will get towards it. And so, what are some of the things that we like? People who are close to us and people who are familiar to us tend to be the ones that we develop initial attractions to. And you know what? Yes, physical attractiveness does play a role in face-to-face romantic relationships, and bizarrely enough, in friendships as well. However, research is going to suggest that it's not the most important factor for both males and females, and that kindness, humor, and intelligence were ranked higher for both genders. They're ranked, I wonder if they're actually acted upon, because when you meet somebody, you can't necessarily know how kind or humorous or maybe intelligent they are in the first meeting. But what's the first thing you notice? Their physical attractiveness. But the question is, what's going to build later down the road, right? Now, exactly, what exactly makes someone attractive? Who knows? This is what your book's going to say. It's going to say women with baby face features, large eyes, small nose combined with prominent cheekbones. For guys, they say that you like that strong jaw and that big broad forehead. I don't know. I will tell you that I read this one study one time called Attractive Faces Are Only Average. And what they used was morphing technology to show that it looks like what we are looking for in physical attractiveness is we are looking for the prototypical animal, the animal in the middle, if you will. So they would show these people pictures of 16 individuals and have them rate the attractiveness of these 16 individuals. They would then take these 16 individuals, combine pairs of them to create 8 combinations of 2 people. And they had people evaluate these combinations of people, right? They then took these 8 combinations and put them together again into pairs so that you had combinations of 4 faces, and they had people represent, now it's the same 16 faces, but they keep getting combined using morphing technology. And what they found is that the more faces you morph together, the more attractive people seem to be. So we don't like the biggest nose, we don't like the smallest nose. We like the average nose that's a combination of all. We don't like the deepest set eyes or the shallowest bug eyes. We like the eyes right in the middle. What is exactly? But it's something about the face. And your book's going to say baby face features for girls and strong jaws for men, right? Now, there is definitely a big premium on being thin in our culture. And I will tell you, as a gentleman who was 55 pounds heavier 7 years ago, I was obese, and now I am what they would call athletic looking. People have definitely begun to treat me differently as a result of losing weight. I swear to God, people are more helpful to me. People are more interested in talking to me. I get way more attention from males as well as females. So there's definitely, I think a premium paid towards being thin and muscular, especially as you get a little bit older, right? Now, there are, of course, cosmetic enhancements that we all use. The men use just for gray. I've got my earring right here to look cool. Some people may use tattoos as cosmetic enhancements. The ones that your book talks about are the ones that usually involve surgical enhancement, and that's another form of enhancement. I like to think of enhancement as being all of these things, but people do tend to like to decorate and use these enhancements. And what this graph down here shows you is that in the last 15 years, there's been an incredible explosion in the number of plastic surgery related enhancements. If you had to get a body part enhanced or changed or tucked or what exactly would you do? I'd be curious. What would you do if you had to get some part of your body changed? Would you do a tummy tuck? Would you do the eyelid strategy? Would you get bigger breasts? Would you get some fat sucked off? Would you get your breasts lifted? For me, I might get a facelift. That's the only thing I could really see. The chin, I don't have the second or third chin down here. I would probably just get everything tightened up a little bit. Oh, no, to go with a tattoo. Dude, I'm afraid of needles. Okay, right. How many of you would go with a tattoo before you'd go with one of these? That's probably a more appropriate question, Dimitro. What's more important, right? Now, here's the neat thing about attractiveness. We might ask the question, when we pair up, do we try to find the best looking person possible, or do we try to match someone who's our level of attractiveness? And the research, your book is going to talk about it fairly briefly with this thing called the matching hypothesis. And this suggests, and actually research has demonstrated, I have that book in my home office, not here, I was going to grab it for you, that people do match based upon the level of attractiveness, but only if rejection is possible. So they would have people come to a party. They'd have everybody get rated independently by everybody else. So you and 25 females and 25 males are at a party. We've all been rated on our level of attractiveness, so I can tell who's the most attractive person in the party based on the ratings of all the other people, who's the least attractive person, and I can sort of rank order you from most attractive to least attractive. So they'll bring people into this party and they'll have them meet. And then what they do is they give them a chance. They tell them they're going to have another party, and they set it up so that two things could happen. People could pick who they wanted to come to the second party with, and we're going to assign this person to you. You're going to get them no matter what. And they found that when there was no rejection, people always went for the more attractive people. However, sometimes they told the people, okay, who do you want to go to the party? And we'll see if they're willing to go to the second party with you. And they found that when there was a possibility of rejection, people tended to pick another person from the party who was rated about the same in levels of attractiveness as them. And so there are people who believe that when we're out in the world navigating around, we actually have a belief in our own level of attractiveness, and that causes us to select partners based upon what we believe to be their rating in the hierarchy of attractiveness. Matt Morita would get a tattoo. Okay, cool. Now, why do people get together? What exactly brings people together? Now, there are some social psychological theories that talk about different theories of how romantic relationships develop and what they're made of. I actually come from an interdependence program. So UNC Chapel Hill's social psych department is very unique in that we have a tradition called the interdependence a perspective on human functioning, which is kind of like this idea of resource exchange. We're going to talk about it right here. Actually, I'll wait to introduce my school. Okay, but one of the earliest ways of thinking about why do males and females pick one another? Are there any patterns that you notice? Does it always seem like the best-looking guys and the best-looking girls get together? Or is there some sort of weird bias or patterns that you see? A lot of people seem to think that attractive females gravitate to men who have great resources, and the men with great resources seek out attractive women. And so that's all based on this idea of a resource exchange theory. And they argue that you can think about relationship forces, the motivations in relationships, as being developed from evolutionary needs. So if you think about it, what from an evolutionary standpoint, why would a female like a male with more resources? On the other hand, why do males seem to be directed at attractive females without regard to their resources? And so what David Buss sort of suggests is this idea, you can think about it from the parental investment theory. Now, for a female, there are only a certain number of children possible. If you started having children at the age of 17 and went through menopause, a female could only legitimately have maybe 16 or 17 children. There's enough time to get pregnant and have these babies. So in a sense, and most females are not going to do that because they're going to want to take care of their offspring. So for a female who has this substantial risk of time, energy, and whatnot. So the female's going to be pregnant. The female's going to need help. When she's pregnant, the female's going to have this baby afterwards. So sort of for females, reproduction involves a substantial investment of time, energy, and risk. On the other hand, for males, reproduction can be a little more flippant. So the male is there prior to conception and then can be gone. And so for a male's ability to have offspring, to spread their genetic seed, is literally unlimited, in the sense that every time a male creates a pregnancy, he does not have to wait 9 more months or 10 more months to begin the next pregnancy. So for a male, an evolutionary strategy might be to look for what appears to be those qualities of the species that you prefer and to focus in that. So in a sense, what David Buss argues is that since females have more to invest in the pregnancy, they tend to pick partners based upon the needs and the resources that they're going to have to invest. And so evolutionarily speaking, it's the male that can provide food and resources and safety. In our particular society, food, resources, and safety come in the form of this thing we call money. And so David Buss argues that you might think of differences in how males and females connect as being related to this evolutionary need. So for men, reproductive opportunities are the most important. They show more interest in sexual activity and physical attractiveness. They're, in a sense, just trying to spread their genes and what they believe to be the best of this species, without regard to any responsibility regarding the upbringing of that organism. On the other hand, the female is tied to the organism, so they argue that the female of the species is going to necessarily have to focus on resources as a function of survival. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's sexist, but it's a theory which suggests why we might have different interests in dating. I want intelligence, I want motivation, I want somebody with get up and go versus I want somebody that looks a certain way. And so they talk about the biological reality, the evolutionary significance, and the behavioral outcomes caused by this particular theory. So in a sense, what we have are people. So at first, we talk about, these close relationships are important to us. What are sort of these contextual factors that cause them? The people who are close to us, the people who are familiar to us, the people whom we find most attractive. And we talked a little bit about what we think might be attractive, and some people have a theory based on attraction related to attractiveness. But now what we're doing is we're talking about why do people choose relationships. And one theory is that you can think about differences between males and females' choice patterns in relationships based upon this evolutionary need, which existed and still does exist, just in different terms than 2 million years ago. Right now, at this point, I've been saying this, and I didn't know where I had this on the slide, but what you're going to notice is that a lot of your research that you're going to read about is conducted on heterosexual couples. So the matching hypothesis, the proximity hypothesis, a lot of this early social psychological research is restricted to comparisons between heterosexual males and females. A lot of the research that was done in the 70s and 80s, if you read these articles, they specifically say we selected heterosexual males and females who were either in relationships or not in relationships. But they always selected heterosexual males and females for their relationship research. Now, those of you who may not be heterosexual would probably say, wow, that doesn't seem right, or that doesn't seem like a great way to do science. And I would argue that you're right. And we have a term heterosexism, which is just this assumption that some people have that when we start talking about relationships, we really need to confine our thinking to only heterosexual romantic relationships. And I have to admit, when I think of relationships, I do the same thing. However, we do have to realize that there are a lot of relationships out there that are not like that. So we might ask ourselves, to what degree are homosexual and heterosexual romantic attachments similar? And more current research has suggested that we really should think about these two types of relationships similarly, because they're not as different as you, the cisgendered male or female, might believe. Okay? Now, two factors affect the viability of relationships. So what relationships are going to like you? What kind of relationships are going to last? If you're that person that always has relationships which crash briefly, crash after they start, you might ask yourself, what am I not having in these relationships that might affect them? Another approach to that is looking at these two factors that might affect the viability of relationships. And actually, your book talks about two of these, and then I would say that they actually argued for a third one too. So reciprocal liking, similarity, and relationship maintenance. Now, reciprocal liking. There's a long tradition of behaviorism in relationships. We like people who reward us. If I tell jokes and you laugh at my jokes, you are reinforcing or rewarding my behavior. Of course, people gravitate towards relationships. Excuse me. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Oops. All right. So there is research to suggest that people are in relationships where people reinforce their particular behavior. If you laugh at my fart jokes, if you like my sports teams, and all of that stuff, then it's more likely that the relationship is going to last. And you know what? It turns out that people tend to be drawn towards others who are similar. Now, it's weird. The question is, do opposites attract, or is the birds of a feather flock together? It turns out that complementariness is fine in some qualities of a relationship. When it comes to attitudes and values, similarity is a better predictor of relationship viability than our similarities related to attractiveness, the kinds of jokes and the kinds of activities that you do. It turns out that value and attitude similarity tend to be the best predictors of relationship viability. And then I might ask you, do you engage in relationship maintaining behaviors? And these are actions and activities that are used to sustain the desired quality of a relationship. I can't tell you how many relationships, and I'm not talking about romantic relationships, but just friendship relationships that have sort of fallen by the wayside because I'm just don't have the energy or interest to maintain those relationships, right? Are you positive and cheerful when you're around this person? Do you try to get to know people and have them tell you their important things and offload their problems and try to be a true friend, right? Are you committed to this person and call them even when they don't call you? Do you stick with them when they're when they do something that maybe is a little bit annoying? Do you spend time networking with their friends? You know, I've seen a lot of people in romantic relationships where the males or the females, where the relationship partners are disdainful towards the other person's family members. Now, you know what, to be truthful, I don't love my in-laws at all. Shh, don't tell them, okay? But I go around them because it's important to my wife, right? But I do know some people that absolutely are disdainful of their partners, friends or family, and they won't go around them. And that's not a great relationship maintaining behavior. Help equally with tasks that need to be done. How many of you live with somebody that doesn't share the housework or doesn't share the chores or doesn't share something? You know, sharing in the cooking duties, the cleaning duties, the money earning duties are all very important in relationship development, right? And you know, it's good after 27 years, it's good for me and my wife to spend time apart, and she has her activities and I have my activities. But you know what? It's also important that we get together too. And so my wife and I do spend time cooking together. We go out to eat dinner together. When one of us goes shopping, we like to go shopping together and treat that as a nerd date. You know what I mean? And so avoidance, antisocial behaviors, let's see. You've got to, one of the things that my wife's better at with her personal relationships than I am with my personal and business relationships is keeping in touch, right? How many of you have a friend that lives in a different part of the country whom you should be calling regularly that you do not call regularly, right? One of the things that I see in some people's relationships that really bother me as a semi-psychologist is when people in relationships say horrible things to one another. They are rude and disrespectful to one another. My wife and I do fight and argue a lot because mostly it's my fault, but we never are disrespectful towards one another. We never try to say mean things, get personal, you know? I'm the ones who always calls, and if I don't call them, they don't call me. There you go, Johanna. So what you're telling me is that while you were interested in maintaining that relationship, they didn't engage in any relationship maintaining behaviors. Absolutely, see? And so this person lost a friend because they didn't want to do a little bit of work. And here's the deal. You don't have to maintain all your friendships, only the ones you want to keep, right? The ones you don't maintain, these keys are not just for sort of the weird thing when we talk about relationships. Sometimes you can be talking about friendships. Sometimes you can be talking about romantic relationships. And in fact, there are even some theories of love that suggest that love is kind of like friendship plus something else, right? And so the things that I'm talking about with regard to relationships, similarity, attractiveness, these things work in the proximity, similarity, these things work in the development of friendships as well as of relationships. Remember, we're talking about close relationships. Like I said, any relationship that is long-term and that can be intimate. Now, here we go. This comes to my particular school of thought. Now, Carolina has these two researchers, DeBow and Henry, and these fellows developed a theory back in the late 50s known as interdependence theory or social exchange theory. And what they suggested is that human beings are basically spending their time doing calculations as if they were business people, evaluating the positives and the negatives of each relationship they're in. Have any of you ever had a relationship with someone where you were deciding if you were going to break up with that person and you sat down and wrote out the positives and the negatives of that relationship? Did anybody ever do that before they initiated a relationship? How many of you have ever done that with work? You know what? I could quit this job and these would be the positives and these would be the negatives. If you've ever done that, you're in a sense have engaged in what we might call a social exchange model of evaluation. If you've ever done that with a relationship. And I remember my wife, I stole her from this military guy 31 years ago. He was on deployment in Korea and I swooped in and snuck her out of the bakery. That's one for Chris versus the military. But I remember, and she dated me for about a year. Well, we didn't date. It was platonic, but I was there letting her know my intentions. And she finally broke up with him. And I saw several years after that, she had actually made a note of pros and cons and then gone through and carefully evaluated the two relationships. And I won out. Not because I was better, it's just because I wasn't in Korea and I was around the corner. But hey, like we said, proximity matters. And so what she did was she did the pros and cons. According to social exchange theory, human beings do that in their personal relationships. And a lady named Carol Rusbolt, who went to UNC Chapel Hill, became quite famous for her investment model, her commitment model of close relationships. Okay, and so this work, your book's going to talk about Brim and Cassine, but actually Carol Rusbolt was very instrumental in developing this commitment model of relationships. And she said that when you look at people in a relationship, you might ask yourselves, why is Kathy staying with Harold even though she seems unhappy? Why did Fred leave his wife Stacy even though Stacy was beautiful and rich and they were having fun? How do people make the calculations to decide and leave? And what she found is that it's not, a lot of times, it's not as simple as whether or not this person is cute or not cute or rich or not cute. Instead, the relationship is a complex calculus that depends on many factors. And she argued that commitment, if you want to find out whether or not somebody is going to leave a romantic relationship, what you need to do is evaluate their level of commitment. It's the most important factor in determining whether or not someone will leave a romantic relationship. And she suggested that this level of commitment is determined by three factors, and it's done in sort of a mathematical calculating process where the person comes to a stay or leave number called their commitment level. And so if you think about it, if you're in a relationship, there are certain rewards from the partner that you have. They may do this well, they may do this well, and they may do this well. Everybody who's in a romantic relationship has a partner that does positive things for them. Maybe your partner's a great lover. Maybe your partner's a great cook. Maybe your partner cleans the house. Maybe your partner has money. Maybe your partner lives in a cool neighborhood. Who knows what the rewards are from your partner? You know what? Each and every one of us also has costs associated with your partner, with their partner. So my partner may not clean the house. My partner may be not as attractive as I want. My partner might be this. My partner might be that. My partner might drink too much, take drugs. My partner might be lazy. My partner might have a job I hate. There are lots of costs. And if you think about it, each and every one of us has this calculus we do where we come to a level of outcome, sort of like how our rewards compare to our costs. Am I getting more of a positive than a negative from this person? Now, it's not as simple as that, because you might say, why do people stay in a relationship where their costs are much higher than their rewards? Their husband isn't cute or make any money, and he's not nice to them, but yet they still stay. Why? Well, it depends on how you think about yourself. What do you think you could get? Okay, so what do you expect in a given relationship? And that's sort of your comparison level. And if you have a great job, if you have lots of romantic offers on your own, your comparison level may be high. But what about the person who's getting terrible outcomes, but they don't have any alternatives? So they argue that this creates a level of satisfaction. So it's the rewards minus my costs basis what I think I should be getting is my satisfaction. We then compare that with our alternatives. Could we leave this relationship? What if we left this relationship? What could we achieve? Is there a beautiful person, a rich person waiting for us? And so they argue that it's your satisfaction minus your comparison level for alternatives, okay, to your relationship. So it's the rewards minus the costs in your relationships compared to the alternatives for other relationships, plus your investments. Now, if you've been married like me for 27 years, if my wife and I broke up, we would lose a lot more than just each other. I would lose my wife's family, my in-laws. I actually do like some of them. I was just kidding. But they would no longer be my friends and family if we broke up. My wife and I have developed mutual friends over 27 years. One of the things that I've seen in breakups, in marriage breakups, of some people that I know in my community, is I'm always forced to choose one or the other partner. I am never allowed to be friends with both of the people that go through a divorce. They just make you choose. And so you lose friends, you lose family members. If you break up with that relationship partner, you may have to sell the house that you raised the kids in. You may have to sell all these nice things that you have. There are lots of things that you build into a relationship the longer you're in a relationship. And so what Carol Rusbolt said is when you want to find out why some people leave unhappy relationships, it's because you have to look at more than just the rewards and costs in a relationship. You have to look at the alternatives. What could they do outside of the relationship? Did you know that back in the 1950s, divorce was very rare? But you know what? Many women were not allowed into the workforce. Why would you possibly leave your husband, no matter how bad he was to you, if you couldn't survive on your own? Absolutely. Women's equality in the workplace, non-discrimination laws against females have caused females to have alternatives, which leads them to then become less satisfied with the rewards and costs that they've been getting in relationships. And I don't mean to stand up here and preach about equality or feminism, but one reason that we think that divorce rates have increased with the increase in females' earning power is that this earning power provides alternatives that allows them to judge their feelings of satisfaction in a different level. And then investments, all relationships, you build in things together that'll be lost. You and I will never have that song we had together, right? I can't give that song to my next girlfriend, right? I'm going to have to find a different song with her. And so one thing you can look at, so look out at your friends who have relationships that seem weird and unhappy and ask yourself, what exactly is predicting? It's not about satisfaction, it's about commitment. Like I said, this model comes from you can go read the books on interdependence. They are very, very boring, talking about dyadic interactions and interaction with two people that have multiple alternatives. And they use these mathematical equations to sort of make these statements about why relationships develop or falter. Okay? You know what? We're going to go ahead and stop today, and I'm going to talk about Sternberg's triangular theory of love in a little bit. So I just want to go back and rehash what I'm talking about. So today's model. So one of the things that we talked about over the course of this semester so far is how important close relationships are to people's coping strategy, to their experience of stress, to their health in general. Remember, we talked about health psychology, stress psychology, coping psychology. We've talked about all that. One of the key factors is close relationships. These close relationships are of many types: family relationships, friendships that are just that come from work partners, romantic relationships, and then marriage when you decide to tie the knot. And I suggested to you that the crazy thing is that relationships come with positives as well as negatives. I then talked about the things that kind of underlie who we choose to begin developing close relationships with. And it turns out that attractiveness, yes, is important, but the crazy thing is familiarity and proximity are almost as important. So even if that person that you like doesn't find you the most attractive, get in there and just become familiar, be close to them. It could work, right? And then we talked a little bit about cultural values on attractiveness. And the thing I wanted you to get from this that I'm going to ask you about on the quiz is this matching hypothesis. Beauty standards change, but what doesn't change is how the standards compare. So big ears may be attractive or little ears may be attractive, but basically what we do know is that whatever's attractive, we tend to match based upon how well we meet that criterion of attractiveness, right? I then talked to you a little bit about why males and females might have different goals when it comes to finding romantic partners. And although, like I said, this kind of sometimes feels a little bit sexist. Why do females like males with more resources? Why do males seem only to be interested in females who look good? And this sort of evolutionary theory suggests that. And then I talked about how we develop our relationships, qualities that help us to develop these deeper relationships. And then finally, I wanted to introduce you to a model which asks the question, why do people sometimes stay in relationships where they don't seem that happy? And this is sort of the social exchange model of relationships. You know what? I want to thank the 4 hearty souls which came and stayed with me today. You folks are absolutely fabulous. I'm assuming it's the same folks, Johanna, Matthew, Caleb, and Dimitro. Thank you very much. Keep reminding me of your continued support at the end of the semester. And I promise you, this constant live attendance will not go unnoticed, okay? Folks, it was great seeing you. Y'all have a great day. And yeah, Johanna, if you want to text me and chat, I'd be more than happy to chat with you about anything you want to talk about. Otherwise, you folks have a great day. I will see you tomorrow where we'll talk about the second half of close relationships. Take care. Having a great day.